Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. Russia did it. Russia finally went 2 days without losing an aircraft. Here's a graphic, February's birdfall. And in the month of February, Russia lost 13 planes. They lost another plane on March 2nd, so within a 15-day period, Russia lost 14 military planes. Here's the graphical breakdown of the value. Over $1 billion in aviation losses. The A-50 was worth $350 million, the Su-35s $100 million each, and the Su-34s about $50 million each. And Russia didn't stop losing planes because they somehow destroyed this Patriot launcher team. They just stopped flying over the occupied territories. And the unconfirmed reports is that Russian pilots have basically mutinied. Their generals still wanted to send them out to keep dying and being shot down. But when it comes to pilot communities, these are usually pretty small, hundreds of guys for sure, but they all know each other. They've all been flying together and training for years, and they just lost 20 of their comrades about in the last 2 weeks, and they were up next. So Russian pilots are refusing to fly these combat missions over the occupied territories as long as this Patriot launcher is still out there hunting them. So in the last 2 days, Russia didn't lose a plane, but they lost another ship. This is the Sergei Kotov, and Ukraine has confirmed its destruction. This ship was worth $65 million. Ukraine did release the drone boat video. I'll put this down below if you want to watch it for yourself. It's about 1 minute and 46 seconds. And we actually do have a camera video from a neighboring ship who caught the moment of impact before this ship was struck by a drone boat and sank to the bottom of the Black Sea. Where did this all occur? This occurred close to the Kerch Strait Bridge. The Kerch Strait Bridge was shut down for an extensive period of time, several hours. So the theory was maybe this was an attempt to destroy the bridge, but then Ukraine ended up getting this patrol boat instead. Well done. Over 50 crew members were evacuated from the Sergei Kotov, but at least 7 were killed, according to military intelligence. And Ukraine got a helicopter. Russian helicopter destroyed on the Sergei Kotov vessel. So you can see on the back of this ship, there's space for a helipad. And at the moment this ship was struck, it had a functional helicopter on the back of the boat. So that's a double win for Ukraine's naval drone fleet. According to British intelligence, Russia faced the highest average daily personnel losses in the month of February since the start of the war. The average Russian personnel losses stood at 983 per day, which according to British intelligence reflects Russia's commitment to mass and attritional warfare. We're 2 years into this special 3-day military operation, and the month of February, by day, was the deadliest month of the war for Russian forces. Given that Putin stands for re-election in 10 days, he really wanted to capture the city of Avdiivka. I also think there's this X factor with military aid being holed up in Washington, D.C., in Congress. Russia's doing the full court press. They want to demoralize the West and demoralize people who support Ukraine. And they're willing to lose as many planes, ships, and soldiers as they can if they think they can get a propaganda win, if they think they can demoralize the West into pressuring Ukraine to surrender to Russia. It's not going to happen. All these soldiers died for nothing. But we'll see. We'll see if Russia can keep this attrition rate up for another 2 years. And I want to share this clip of a Russian combat medic, and he works in the Krinky area. Krinky has been under intense fighting for the last 6 months as Ukraine continues to cross the river to contest the Kherson region. So this is what this Russian combat medic has to say. I am somewhat tired. 300s arrive every day. 300 is the code for a wounded Russian soldier. Young guys are dying. Young guys receive such wounds and yell, "I am in pain." Suddenly they are getting such wounds that they are not supposed to get. First they need to be bandaged through the pain and moans and yells, and then we give them anesthesia. Either I do it or other guys bring them to the medvac van that again drives at a very high risk. It leaves Krinky under the insane mortar fire. The guys that transport wounded are taking a lot of risk. Everything is flying over our heads. Orlons, the big drones, them you don't notice. Kamikaze drones, release and drop drones, correcting drones, mines. There is a lot of foreign weapons. Again, mortars and barrel guns. They shoot us in various ways. They use explosive charge, and for the most part they injure as many people as possible. Ukrainians spare no one. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they became inhuman. I'm going to pause for a second and tell this Russian medical worker, it's because you invaded and occupied their territory. You started killing them first, and you've been stealing their children. That's why they're hunting you so viciously. Why such a vicious hatred towards people? There is very little flying their way for the most part. We just don't let them come to this side of the bank. Shells don't reach the target, as if there's a spell of some sort, or not the spell, as if everything is bought and there is order not to shoot at those positions. So Russian artillery is incredibly inaccurate. Reports are that these are North Korean shells with inconsistent charges, so they go a different distance depending on what day that shell was made. North Korea is not very good on quality control. So Russia's taking horrendous losses, and it's true. Ukraine is using these airburst drone drop grenades to scatter shrapnel and wound as many people as possible. So I actually do believe this Russian medic in that Ukraine is trying to wound as many Russians as possible. Wounded people take up time and resources. Wounded people psychologically torment their comrades who have to look at them and listen to them suffer, knowing that the next drone drop grenade is coming for them. This is going to continue until Russia leaves Ukrainian territory. And Putin stands for re-election in 10 days. That's the next big date on the calendar. But once we get past March, I think the next big events will be the May 9th Victory Day Parade in Moscow. Last year's May 9th parade was pretty sad, but I'm curious if they're going to do it again this year. Are they going to put on this propaganda show of military might at the same time their soldiers are dying horrendously at the highest casualty rate of the war in Ukraine? What tanks, what jets, what infantry is going to be marching through Red Square on May 9th? I'm looking forward to it. Ukraine stabilizes front west of Avdiivka and holds key villages. Although fighting continues, Ukraine has managed to stabilize the situation in the frontline towns. This is what I said more or less would happen about a month ago, given that the Russians had advanced so far on the flanks to the north of Avdiivka and the south of Avdiivka. It just made sense to fall back 3 or 4 kilometers and straighten out the front lines. So let's put this in perspective. This is always helpful. Let's get out the ruler. And the Russians started here, and they've gotten to about here. That's 12 kilometers. But Russia's stated objective is to reach the territorial boundary of Donetsk. So how much farther do they have to go? From here to about here? That's another 64 kilometers. To go 12 kilometers in 2 years, at the rate this war is going, the rate the Russians are advancing, it's going to be another decade before the Russians take the entirety of the Donbass region. And how many Avdiivka-sized towns are there remaining in Donetsk? If the Russians struggled this much to take a city with a pre-war population of 35,000, it's just going to keep happening. This dream that people who support Russia have, that Ukraine is going to admit defeat and just surrender all these towns, it's not going to happen. Ukraine is going to fight for every single one of these towns. And the only way Russia can advance is with artillery, destroying every building, killing every person, and then just rolling in to collect the rubble. Ukraine says they're building defenses 24/7 amid criticism. Ukraine has been criticized for the rapid advance of Russian forces following the fall of Avdiivka. I think we can admit this now, that Ukraine did not build proper defense lines across the front because they assumed in the year 2024 they would be on the offensive. In war, you should really prepare for the worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario came true. MAGA Republicans are blocking additional military aid for Ukraine. If this $60 billion in military aid from the United States was passed last October like it should have been, then Ukraine would still be advancing. There still would be an effective counteroffensive. Ukraine would still be liberating territory. Russia knows how important it is to block military aid from the United States. And for 2024, Ukraine has to play defense. So they're digging these trenches, they're putting up these fortifications, they're preparing to lose more territory, especially in the Donbass region. But Russia's going to be defeated, and in 2025, the tide will turn again. Medvedev says Ukraine is definitely Russia, rules out peace talks. The former Russian president says parts of Ukraine should return home as he rules out peace talks with Zelensky. So everything Medvedev says and does is insane. This is the former president of Russia, Putin's right-hand man. I think he's in charge of Putin's Security Council. And he gave a very goofy presentation in front of this giant screen, wearing a communist Mao suit. And this is what he said. One of the former leaders of Ukraine once said that Ukraine is not Russia. This is a concept that should disappear forever. Ukraine is definitely Russia. So this is Dimitry Medvedev speaking on behalf of the Russian people, speaking on behalf of the Russian government, stating that Ukraine is a place on the map. Ukraine is not an ethnicity. It's not a culture. It's not a language. It doesn't actually exist. This is the textbook definition of a genocide, in which you target a group of people who identify differently than you, and you say, I'm going to kill all of you unless you abandon that identity and you accept ours. Dimitry Medvedev, of course, continues. Let me read this. As for our borders, our president said precisely and succinctly, Russia's borders do not end anywhere. These are very good words. Wow. So in English, in this presentation, it's written, Russia's border doesn't end anywhere, signed by Vladimir Putin. Try to imagine the American equivalent, for Joe Biden to declare that America's borders don't end anywhere. And Barack Obama was giving the presentation. What if America just said, that territory in Canada belongs to the United States, that territory in Mexico belongs to the United States, Cuba belongs to the United States, and we're going to annex this territory. The borders of the United States don't end anywhere. For people who support Russia, they're just objectively evil. when this is who the Russians publicly state who they are, and they still continue to support Russia. Here's a quote from John Mearsheimer. Russia has no plans to expand its borders. And Dimitry Medvedev stands in front of this goofy map. This map's insane for numerous reasons. Medvedev has shared it before. He believes that Hungary is going to get back some territory from Ukraine. Poland's going to invade Ukraine and annex this territory. Romania is going to invade Ukraine and annex this territory. Moldova is going to remain independent. Belarus is going to remain independent. And then Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Odessa will all be taken by Russia. This is never going to happen. These people are insane. So I want to ask you the question, who wore it better, Dimitry Medvedev or Hillary Clinton? Let me know in a comment down below. The other top story we should be talking about is the German military has embarrassed itself again. Germany probes Russia's leak of a military call discussing Taurus cruise missiles for Ukraine. German authorities probe potential Russian eavesdropping and the disclosure of a video conference call where German officers discuss sending Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. This is about a 35-minute phone call that Russian intelligence somehow intercepted of German officers talking about Taurus cruise missiles for Ukraine. And Russian intelligence deliberately leaked this phone call to the internet with a transcript because they want to embarrass the German government, embarrass the German military, but mostly panic the German people to apply pressure on their government to block the transfer of these cruise missiles to Ukraine. Berlin did an investigation, and they're now stating this morning that one of these German officers logged into the call via an insecure phone line in a Singapore hotel room. This is pretty stupid. I hope this German officer is punished for not doing proper security protocols to make sure that when discussing classified information, you're on a secure phone line. But what they talked about wasn't policy decisions. What these German officers talked about is just the logistics. For military leaders, it's not their job to make these political decisions. This belongs with the civilian government in Germany. It's the job of military officers to be ready, to be prepared, and to plan for whatever political decision their civilian government makes. So these German officers didn't do anything wrong. They were just doing their job. But this isn't a conversation that should have been recorded by the Russians and then released to the internet. But since we're talking about it, this is pretty interesting. Unlike the Ukrainians, the Luftwaffe thinks the Kerch Bridge is a pretty poor target for Taurus cruise missiles. Discussion led by Frosted names the Kerch Bridge and ammunition depots in Crimea as probably the best target for German Taurus cruise missiles. Yeah, I would agree with that ammunition depots are probably priority number one. Every time you blow up one of these ammunition depots, you're saving Ukrainian lives. Those are artillery shells that are never going to be fired. And of course, the Russians act like children, and on Kremlin State TV, they ran this segment, basically threatening German bridges. I'll read a little bit of this. For all the advancedness of the interlocutors, pictures of the best bridges in Germany do not pop up in their heads. Of course, in this rather cramped country, there are no bridges as long as the Crimean one. But still, there is also something to look at through the missile site. Here, for example, is the Fehmarn Sound Road rail bridge in the Baltic Sea. So on Kremlin State TV, they insult German bridges, saying they're very small and not very famous. And then, this is a 2-minute clip, I'll link it down below. They start listing German bridges that they would blow up, if Germany supplies Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. Quick update on U.S. politics. Johnson opens door for alternative Ukraine aid package in the House. This man is a liar. What's happening here is the Senate passed a bill. We need to go through the discharge process to just pass the same version. Mike Johnson knows this. He's trying to delay, he's trying to block. So what he's doing now is he's meeting with House Republicans who support Ukraine and telling them, well, why don't you just craft a House version of an aid bill that includes some border security that we like? And how can a House Republican fight that or argue with that? So Mike Johnson's going to successfully waste some more time. He's convinced House Republicans who do support Ukraine to pursue their own House version of a border bill and aid bill. This is a lie. He's working for Russia. Johnson and Trump have no intention on securing the border prior to November. They want to campaign on this. They want Americans upset about it. They don't want to secure the border prior to November. So just reading this headline pisses me off. U.S. House Speaker delays Ukraine aid vote until late March or beyond. The danger, and Mike Johnson knows this, if the House passes a different version of military aid for Ukraine, it then has to go back to the Senate. And the Senate has to vote on it again. And in the United States Senate, you need 60 votes to get anything done. So if the House does this, if they pursue their own version of a military aid package for Ukraine, then Johnson knows there's a chance to kill it once it goes to the Senate. The Kremlin trolls taking over the Senate currently are going to block the bill once it gets there. So please don't do this. Please just do the discharge process and pass the Senate version. I'm sorry there's no border security included, but the Republican Party doesn't want to secure the border. Let's stop pretending like they do. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. And France has allocated 5 million euros towards the reconstruction projects in the Chernihiv Oblast. Thank you so much, France. Lithuania has announced that all cars registered in Russia have to leave the territory of Lithuania and the EU by March 11th. Failure to comply will result in penalties under their administrative offense code, including fines and the confiscation of these vehicles. So that would be hilarious if Lithuania started confiscating cars registered in Russia and then donating them to Ukraine. Let's make this happen, Lithuania. Final clip I have for you are Ukrainian military cadets at the military academy in Odessa. So these men are probably 21, 22, 23, about to commission as lieutenants. And I just want to share with you their workout routine. It's a nice looking gym. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.